Yes, what is up,
Yay!
everybody? That was really soft, polite. Yay.
Yay!
Happy Monday. Thank you guys for taking the time out of your busy Mondays to spend it with us tonight during Ginger Runner Live, episode number 171. Tonight, we are joined by a guest who we've had on the show before. I would say multiple times now, a good handful of times. She's one of our favorite people. I was very, very fortunate to be the Father Ginger at
What is
this is me gracing them with the grace of wedding. I don't know. I think in my mind, like laurel leaves with holy water. It makes no sense. But I performed the ceremony at their wedding last summer, which was a blast. So much fun. We are joined by one half of the Grossman couple, Dom Grossman and Katie Grossman, but we are joined by Katie Grossman tonight. And I'm so excited to have her on because this is the Hardrock 100 week. Yeah. And we're going to talk to her all about last year's event that she did not get to participate in, and we'll talk about why. And then we're going to talk about why she's excited about this weekend, because she does get to participate in it. All in tonight's episode of Ginger Runner Live. Sit back, everyone. Grab your drink of choice, adult or child. Here we go, guys. Episode number 171 begins now. Ginger Runner. Yes.
We're already getting comments in the chat room about your Mariners hat and about my salmon-colored shirt.
What is this? Why?
I don't know. People are liking your hat.
Oh, yeah. Now that we live in Seattle, I think it's appropriate to don the Mariners garb, which I've had since I was a kid. Not this hat. This is actually a new Mariners hat. But I've been a Mariners fan. I don't know why, since I was a child growing up in the Northwest. The Mariners are not a good team, never have been, except for the early 90s. There was a great season there. But you become fans of the Mariners. And the salmon, I don't know. I don't get the salmon, but it is territory.
We're also getting comments on the wall. Yes.
Yeah,
it's still
under construction.
We're still in Murder Dungeon.
We're still in Murder Dungeon. Also, I want to start the show tonight by giving a big shout out and a big thank you to one of our viewers. Week after week, he's been a Patreon supporter, and he recently stepped up to a new level that I was like, you know what, maybe this is something that we can do to help support Ginger Runner Live. Our good viewer, Brian, has jumped up to the premier level where every Ginger Runner Live for that month, we actually get to talk a little bit about him and his business and different things like that, because he is now essentially sponsoring Ginger Runner Live, which is pretty cool. So Brian, big shout out to you. He's actually in the chat room tonight. He views every Monday show, if not live, then the post show. He's just been a regular supporter of everything that we've been doing here. And it's really cool now to be able to give back a little bit and talk and thank him since he's at that top tier level. And each month could be new people, new businesses, new companies, but they'll all have one thing in common. And that's that they're usually going to be viewers or supporters since the beginning of Ginger Runner. It's not going to be some brand coming out of nowhere and like, hey, talk about my product and stuff like that. It's going to be people that actually care about the show and what we do here. And tonight is no exception. So thank you, Brian, for the continued support and for tonight's episode being dedicated to you. Our guest tonight is a badass ultra runner. She's been one of our heroes since we found out about her and met her and ran with her down in the Southern California mountain ranges, including the San Gabriels. We're going to talk to her about a lot of different things tonight. We are joined by Mrs. Katie Grossman. Katie, how are you? It is so great to have you on the show.
Yay!
Hi, guys.
How are you?
I'm great. I'm living a dream.
You definitely are living the dream right now.
Yes. And I want to touch a little bit on that before we get into that talk of the conversation. Kim?
My name is Kim. No. For new viewers and for our returning viewers, as always, I'll be in the chat room. So if you have questions for our guest Katie tonight, just ask them in the chat room. I'll be pulling them throughout the hour.
So get those questions out. We're talking about Hardrock, and I know a lot of you are really excited. We get so excited around Hardrock because this is one of those big, huge events. But Katie, you mentioned living the dream. This is something that Kim and I have admired about you. We have a number of similarities in that you lived in Los Angeles. You lived the grind of the LA life, which is something that we can both relate to. But recently, help us kind of set the scene here. When did you decide to leave Los Angeles, and where did you end up, or where did you end up, and why did you make that choice, and all that kind of thing? Because your life has changed in a big way.
It's changed a lot this year, definitely for the better. Yeah, I mean, so Dom and I have lived in Los Angeles I've been there for like 12, 13 years, and we had just kind of gotten to the point where we really started talking about like the future and children and things like that. And we were just like, we live in a box. This isn't going to work. It's not feasible. So we were kind of looking at like how we were going to fix the situation that we had in LA, just thinking about the future. And we bought a cabin up in Wrightwood, California, which is the San Gabriel Mountains above Los Angeles, back in 2014. Just as, we knew we weren't going to buy in Santa Monica anytime soon, and we wanted to have an investment property. And also, like, we spend all of our time up there. So we bought the place, hoping that maybe someday when we retired, we could move there. And I guess when we were kind of starting to think about what was next, Dom started applying for new jobs, and he specifically started looking if there was anything close to Wrightwood. And what's really great is he's in aerospace, and a lot of the research and development facilities are down in the high desert below Wrightwood, because there's nothing out there. So they do all the secret shit out there. And lucky for us, he got the job. And it was great because it was a huge step up for him. And like, it's really not just like we moved to Wrightwood and then we're like figured out how to make it work. Like, it was actually a really great job for him. I work in advertising. I loved my job. I loved the agency that I worked at. But I used to work free. Like, I've gone back and forth between working at agencies and being a freelance writer. And I always, every few years, I start to really want to go back to the freelance lifestyle and just being my own boss and, working on more of a variety of projects. Because when you work in an agency, you tend to work at like the same type of stuff, the same clients. So it was kind of a no-brainer for me. Like, I said that if that ever worked out, I would give up my agency job and I could just go back to being a freelancer, independent contractor, whatever you want to call it. Because as long as I have the internet, I can work from anywhere. And we just last winter got fiber internet in Wrightwood, California. So I'm like ready to go. So yeah, so now we live up at 6,600 feet in our little cabin in the mountains, and we pinch ourselves every morning.
I love it because LA is one of those cities that you can get wrapped up in so easily, whether you're on the entertainment side of things or advertising. It's a city built on that sort of industry. Mm-hmm. And it's so easy to just make it your everyday and get wrapped up in the hustle. And so I admired the big decision for you guys to leave what I can imagine was a certain sense of stability to move to the mountains and kind of pursue your passions. This all happened last year, right? About a year ago. Is that correct?
December is when this all was going down, and Dom found out right before we went back to Missouri to visit my family, and he found out right before that he got the job. So he basically came back from Christmas break and gave his notice, and he moved to Wrightwood in January, and I stayed working full time for another month and moved at the end of January. And then it turned out I actually stayed on with my company to finish out a few projects. So I stayed on for a couple months and worked remotely / came back to LA for production until all my projects were closed out. So yeah, it was beginning of the year.
That's pretty awesome. And we are huge advocates of following your heart and living the life of happiness, really trying to find what makes you truly happy. Having known you now for a couple of years, let's talk a little bit about last year. I know that you are very close with the AC 100, Angeles Crest 100. Obviously, you live in Wrightwood. You live feet from the start line, that sort of thing. Last year, you were on the wait list for the Hardrock 100, and help set the scene a little bit. What ended up going down leading up to the race and after?
Yeah, for people that aren't familiar with your story.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically what happened is the lottery for Hardrock is in December, and I got drawn at number 5 on the wait list. And historically, on the never started wait list. Sorry, there's the 3. I don't know if we want to go into that, but basically what you need to know is I was in a position that historically would always get into the race. Usually there were 9 had been the lowest amount at that point. So I had kind of set up in my head, I'm like, if I'm 6 or less, like I'm in, I know I'm in. And I mean, I cried, like I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get to run. And so I proceeded as if I was in, because I never thought I wasn't. And fast forward, basically what happened, like I went out for 2 weeks and I was shocked that when I left to go out there, I still wasn't in, but everybody was like, you know, it's just a weird year. People always drop like the couple weeks before, and just nobody ever dropped. So, I mean, that's a good thing, you know, like you don't ever wish for someone to not get to run, especially if they'd made it that close to the race. Like then, you know, it's something bad happened, like maybe an injury or sickness or something. So you don't wish that on anybody. It was just that historically, usually the 5th person would get to run it, right? This year, they're already to number 6, and it's not even, well, it is race week. But anyway, so I went all the way up until the race. And usually you find it like on Thursday is the day that you have to check in. And we kind of all thought that maybe somebody just wouldn't show up, because usually that happens. Like some people just don't know to call the race director, but everybody showed up. So I knew my chances were slim, but I dressed out the next morning, because you have up until 15 minutes before the race. Everyone has to check in. And in the past, I've been there in the gym before when either somebody didn't show up or somebody called Dale and was sick or something happened and somebody's gotten in race morning. So to make matters even more dramatic, it got to the point that the clock clicked 5:45, like people's Suntos and whatnot were starting to click over, and there was a little buzz in the corner and they're like, you're in, oh my gosh, like somebody's not here. And Dale was like, whatever number, you have 30 seconds. And after he said you have 20 seconds, somebody came running in. So it was that close.
I didn't know that. Oh my God.
It was pretty dramatic. And then Brian Powell was standing right there getting ready to run. He like snapped a photo of me like, it was terrible because I felt so bad. Like I was hiding in the corner because I knew I would be emotional, but I also was like, didn't want to take anything away from anybody else's race, because it's also a good thing that everybody showed up. And you know, I don't know that guy. I don't know his story. Like, I mean, I don't know if he got stuck in like the Ure traffic with the stoplight or whatever it was. Like, you know, he didn't mean to be there that close, and I'm sure he was stressing out. So anyway, I had my little couple tears, and then I went back out there and cheered people on, and I ended up pacing my friend Howie like I pace him every year. And that was it.
I want to kind of put that into context. So this is one of the hardest, if not the hardest 100 on earth. I mean, it's easily one of the most difficult. And this is a race that Katie was on the wait list for and trained for, basically went through all the motions as though she was running it. And then seconds before possibly being the last person allowed into the race, moments before the race began, the person whose spot she was going to fill entered the gym, probably off, like you said, like in a panic, probably like, oh, I'm here.
Yeah, I didn't see. I was hiding in the corner.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what exactly does this race mean to you? Obviously, it means a lot.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those races that gets in your blood. Like Dom and I first came out to Hardrock in 2011, and it was basically just earlier that year we were looking at photos. Like we found, like, I don't know, it wasn't like as Hardrock definitely wasn't as well known then, and so he had just heard of the race, like, because he's always looking for hard stuff to do and whatnot, and he's like Googled Hardrock 100, and he found this photo tour of the course that I don't even know if you could find it if you Googled it now. It's so buried by everything that exists now, but he found this, and he came over one night, and that was our date. We were very cheap dates at the time. We clicked through the photos, and we saw a picture of Little Giant Pass, which going this way, I come down. That's the first pass I come down, but the opposite way, it's the last pass you go up. And it's just remarkable. And you can see the trails zigzagging up. And we're like, what the hell is this? Like, we have to go see what this is about. This is insane. So even though we had like qualifiers and whatnot, like we didn't put into the lottery. We were like, no, like we got to go check this out first. So we just showed up in 2011 and it was cool. Like we were instantly kind of taken in by the family and we ended up helping out with Nick Curry. I think it was his second or third time doing it, and his family kind of adopted us and showed us the ropes, and we were just like, this is really special. And, you know, sitting in the gym after the race too and watching, you know, Dale say a little something about every runner and hearing what people had gone through. It was insane. And also we went on a few hikes and we were like, this is the most spectacular terrain we've ever been in our lives. Like, that's it. We want to do Hardrock. So we started putting in, and Dom got lucky and got drawn with one ticket. And that was before there were like the 3 lotteries either.
Right.
It was back when 5-time finishers were automatically in, and then it was just a lottery, and he got pulled. Which we were like, oh my gosh, great. We don't know what we're doing, but sure. So we came out and he finished in a great time, and I paced him, and then it just kind of became this thing that we just kept coming back. And, you know, I never got drawn. I was never even on the wait list, but I just kept showing up because it didn't really matter. I was like, you know, whatever, I didn't get in. And actually those first few years I was like, please do not pick my name. I need more experience out here. And it was great. My friend Howie started letting me pace him. And so I paced him a couple times for like almost 50 miles of the race. And I got my butt handed to me by the weather. We've gotten into hairy situations out there. We've gotten into interesting situations out there. I've seen him puke his guts out, like kind of seen him go through a lot of different stuff. And I feel it was just a couple years ago where I started feeling like, okay, I could do this. And I don't know, it's just become this obsession because I love being out here and I love being part of it any way I can. And I really mean that. But I also was like, I can't wait till I get my turn to see what that feels like to do a lap around the San Juans, because I can't imagine, like 50 miles of it destroys me. So TBD, we'll see what happens.
I mean, this is what's pretty crazy is last year you count down the seconds to find out that you're not going to be able to toe the line, but you're there and you get to support and you get to participate in the event from kind of behind the scenes or as a pacer and crew.
Yeah.
But then great. Over the last year, you actually now it begins to unfold that you will get to participate full on in this event, which I think is pretty great. We're going to talk all about that here in just a second, but of course we are live and we have tons of live questions.
We are live. Yeah. Great question from Scout in the chat room. Scout asked, Katie, knowing this is your first Hardrock, but definitely not an unfamiliar course for you, do you have a specific approach to balancing hiking and running, or any specific goals for place or finish?
Not really. I keep saying, like, when people ask me my goal, I'm like, well, I really don't want to be out a second night, more for like self-preservation reasons. That just sounds terrible. But if it comes down to that, like obviously 48 hours is fine. I think I'm definitely going to start as conservative as possible. Like I actually really expect to be in like the back half of the pack for the first few passes. Just from seeing how people start and also from hearing from, you know, I'm fortunate to like be in the company of 7, 8, 10, 20 time finishers that have given me a lot of advice. And they're like, people start way too fast. Like you've got to start slow. And I don't really have any problem doing that. So I'm just going to start slow and do my best. Like, I know that sounds like such a weird, like do my best. Of course you always want to, I don't want to say I'm not competitive at all, but it's like, I don't know, I can only do what I can do out there, you know? So I'm going to just take it easy, but I'm still going to be trying my hardest. And then whatever time that ends up being is what time it ends up being. And I'm not, I don't know, I'm not focusing too much on that. As far as the hiking question, I mean, pretty much like most of the time I'm going uphill, I'm hiking, and that'll be that way for the entire race. And then I'm running downhill, and I hope to just keep doing that for however many hours I have to do that. And we'll see what that ends up. I know a couple people have made their predictions, and I have a friend that said that he would write it down on a piece of paper because he thinks that I'm going to do better than I think I am, but he doesn't want me to get scared. So he wrote it down on a piece of paper. We'll see if he's right or not, but I'm just going to do my best.
I have you down as first place overall, 15 hours and 20 minutes. That's right.
Oh.
Yeah. That's
but also like
Yeah.
holding hands with somebody.
But also holding hands with
Sure.
Dom and maybe like 6 other people. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sure.
That
Yeah.
sounds
Why
good.
not? Let's get to
I'll
one
take
more
it.
live question.
Yeah, speaking of friends, we did have Guillaume in the chat room earlier. He wanted to say
Guillaume
hi to
dropped
you,
by.
but he also had to return to work. But he did
Oh,
give you a little
no.
shout out.
Haji.
He gave you an LA.
Question
Of course he did.
from the chat room. Katie, how did this year's training for Hardrock 100 compare to last year's?
That's the $1 million question. I am honestly, in retrospect, I'm so glad that I didn't run last year and that this year's my year. Last year, there was just a lot going on. I was really busy with work, and I planned our own wedding, and there was just a lot of other stuff going on. And while I trained through all of that, and I feel like I could have done it last year for sure, and I felt fine. Like I was like, I can do this. I feel like I'm in good shape, whatever. This year is a completely different ballgame because I had the space to, like I said, I went into just being a freelancer, and as soon as my last projects kind of winded down with my last agency, I just decided not to work for 2 months. And I packed up, we bought a truck, built a bed in the back, and I've been living out here training, and I feel great. I feel like I'm really I don't know if I can say the best shape of my life. It's one of the years I trained for AC. I felt like I was in really, really good shape too, but it was different because the training's different now than it was then. But I feel like I am honestly in the absolute best shape I could ever be in to do Hardrock. So yeah.
Yeah. Do you think moving to altitude, now living at altitude, but then also, because I know you got your new trail rig and you outfitted it with like a mattress and stuff like that. You can actually live
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually do have a question in regards to that as well. Alex in the chat room says, where are we here? Question for Katie. Katie, I read your Trail Sisters article from May, which was great.
Mm-hmm.
What drove you to live out of your truck for training, and how has that experience been?
Part of it was, like I said, it went back to those conversations Dom and I were having about like the next stages of life. And I always really regret that after college, I didn't go travel or do something. I just moved to LA and went straight into the workforce. And I've never really had like a long vacation the entire time that I've ever been working. It's like a few days at a time, for a race. And it was always kind of part of me that I wondered, like, will I regret that I never just like traveled or whatever? And while that didn't manifest into traveling the world, which I know friends that have, before they've had kids, that's what they did. Like they quit their jobs and traveled or did whatever. For me, Hardrock was such a big thing, and I love the San Juans so much that I was like, this is the time to do it. If this is going to be one of my last races before maybe moving on to the next stage of life, this is really the last time I can be like super selfish and just train as hard as I want and not worry about anything. And Dom was cool with it and was like, yeah, you should do it. It really is like, go for it. And so that was it.
I love it. And you've been referring to it as Vision Quest.
Yeah. So the last time I was in between agency jobs and I had a little period of time, I was training for AC. And ironically, that's exactly what I was just talking about. That was the last time I felt like I was in the best shape of my life too. So maybe there's a correlation. I don't know. But I left, and that actually, it was before we had our house in Wrightwood. And I just went camping up at Guffey Campground on Blue Ridge by myself out of my Jeep, set up a tent, and I just trained, and I was calling it Vision Quest because I really just went up there to be alone and recenter myself and forget about corporate America for a while and see kind of where it took me and what I wanted to do next. And I don't know. So this was the extended version of that on steroids. So
I love it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I like that you guys had the conversation about you kind of being able to be selfish and take the time for yourself, because the next stage of life for a lot of women is an intimidating thing to kind of approach, especially if you are an athlete or if running long distances is something that you really enjoy.
Yep.
As much as it is like a partnership and 50-50, a lot of times a woman does end up, you're kind of attached to that stage of your life more so than.
Well, yeah, and I think I'm assuming I'll want to be like running is going to fall by the wayside because that's going to be so important, and I'm excited about that. So I'm like, I don't know. I've always wanted to do it this way, and I've never had the opportunity to. So I had a couple months, and here we are. I'm really grateful.
Yeah, it's awesome.
That's another reason why we really love you and love to have you on the show too, is just because we love you and Dom, and it's pretty cool to see such a fun couple support each other so heartily through everything. You pursuing Hardrock and Dom pursuing AC, and you guys are always there to support each other. It's pretty damn cool. And I think it's a great lesson and a good it's a good example for those of us who are maybe looking to join this ultra endurance sort of lifestyle. You're going to have to constantly be supportive of one another and make sacrifices for one another too, which is pretty cool. We still have tons of live questions. I will try to get to as many of these during the main show as possible, but I definitely want to start talking a little bit about this year's Hardrock. You are now in race week. I mean, the race starts Friday. Are you freaking out? Did you feel like you've had a good amount of peak in your training? I'm assuming you're in taper. Killian, just for reference, Killian Burnett was out for a 56K run this afternoon, a part of his taper. What's it like right now? What's going through your head? What's going on in Silverton?
Yeah, I'm in taper-ish mode or whatever. I've shut down the big long days. It's funny. I was recently having a conversation with somebody about, they're like, what was your peak mileage and whatever. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I had to go look because I don't think in miles out here at all. It's all time on feet and vert. Yeah. And so I more set a goal of having a peak vert week of 30,000. And I actually got right below that because there was an electrical storm, and I decided it wasn't worth the extra 1,000. I ran down to the trees as hard as I could. So I failed on that a little bit, but I thought more in terms of that. And also realizing, so that week was only 58 miles and I had almost 30,000 feet of climbing. And the week before I had closer to 80 miles, and then it was like maybe 25 or 26, but it's still like it just depends where you ran. And in both of those weeks too, I was doing a ton of 14ers, which you go slower up there. And most of the stuff out here is pretty crumbly towards the top of the really high peaks. So it takes longer. And it's interesting. Like, it's just, when I said it's different training than AC, like AC, I have mileage goals and things like that because I know what times I can run on sections of the course. But out here, it's really time on feet more than anything. And I really, really listened to my body as well, where if I had a couple hard days, because I was trying to throw in a few workouts too, where I would do like 2-minute repeats uphill at like 11,000 feet. And the next day I would be destroyed if I did that because that was so hard. So I really just kind of listened. I would wake up and sometimes I'd be like, yeah, I think I need to do some yoga today. So that was kind of how training went. And then now it's really just either going for little jogs if I want to run, or like today, Dom and I went on a hike up high, but it was just fun and chill. And then we ran down because it was raining and lightning. But yeah, but right now I'm just trying to keep my feet up and not do a lot. It's more just to like shake things out and keep the nerves away. But I actually don't feel nervous at all because I'm like, dude, it's a long walk with jackets. That's what I keep telling people. I'm like, there's nothing, I don't know what I can worry about. I just like carry a jacket and go into the mountains. Like, that's all it is.
Maybe that's great advice
I was
for
just
my
gonna
first
say.
100 this summer.
We have a lot of viewers who are maybe contemplating signing up for 100, or maybe down the line. Doesn't have to be this year. It could be 5 years from now. But thinking about it, that might be the most simple terms in which to think of 100. But I'm thinking back to Cascade going, that's exactly what it was. Sometimes I moved a little bit faster than a hike.
And there's snacks.
And Cascade is there's certainly, I think, less, like with Hardrock, I think the gaps between aid stations are probably a little bit more extreme compared to Cascade. I think Cascade's like every 6 to 15 miles or something. But I love the way you put that. It's simple. It's a great mindset, especially for a race like this. And that actually made me the next question that I was going to ask, but you may have just kind of answered it. I'll change it a little bit. You have experienced many facets of Hardrock. Hardrock is known for not just being one of the toughest hundreds because of overall gain or altitude, because you're dealing with both. You're tagging out, 14ers and stuff during the course of the race. It doesn't go below, I think it doesn't go below 9,000 feet or something like that. You'll have to correct me.
Your is 8 something. So that's the low point.
And that's the low point.
Yeah.
And you also deal with weather and all these unknowns. In your time with this race over the last, 10 years or so, going into this weekend, are there certain things that you're like, oh, well, here are the elements that I'm actually most concerned about?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big things for me out there would be possibly going hypothermic. The only times I've ever DNF'd a race, like of hundreds, were hypothermia, with the exception of one other situation that was different. But hypothermia has got me a few times. But I also didn't have as good of gear then. Like, I know I'll probably be hiking Virginius with way too much stuff in my pack, but I'd rather do that than freeze up there. So I'm a little worried about that. The snow really isn't going to be a factor. There was a ton of snow. It was like a record snow fall this year in January, and when I first got out here, it was crazy. I've never seen this much snow out here, but it's melting a lot. We've had really hot weeks, so I don't think that'll be too big of a factor, and that doesn't really worry me. And luckily too, the water crossings, actually, like the big melt already happened, so that's actually going to be okay now. So it's really just weather and uncontrollable things that happen, like one year somebody got hit in the face with a rock. Like, there's just stuff like that you can't control. No, the other thing is just keeping my stomach together. I usually, in the wee hours of the morning, I usually throw up, and I think it's more of just like being awake and weird stuff going into your stomach. But I also plan to eat a lot differently out here. I'm going to eat a lot more solid food than just pure sugar. So maybe I'll be okay. I really don't know, but I would say just either some unforeseen weather circumstance making me really cold, or a stomach issue are the only things I'm like really concerned about.
Well, it's just a hike through the mountains with lots of jackets, or a couple jackets. I don't know. I love the way that you put that. Lots of jackets, multiple. I remember at Cascade, I had hyperthermia at Cascade, and I had 5 jackets on, and it didn't help because at that point I was sweating, and the sweat was getting cold. Like, it was. You
also had space blankets on.
Yeah,
you also had multiple pairs of gloves on.
Yeah, but see, you are far more experienced than I was. That was my first 100. You've done multiple at this point. We have lots of live questions, so let's get to some of these, babe. What do we got?
Yeah, a question from Kim in the chat room. Kim Katie.
Is this Kim Wrinkle?
It is.
Kim Wrinkle.
Hey, I'm 3 doors down from you right now.
You could just
Kim should go over and knock on the door and just ask you in person.
Katie, having seen the entire course, what is your favorite section and what is the most challenging section?
Well, I don't really know, because I think everything at the end is going to be more challenging just because I'm tired. But I always say I'm really looking forward to Virginius. When I got to pace that section a couple of years ago with Howie, that was like the quintessential Hardrock moment, was, climbing those icy death slopes up to the top. They'd cut the steps. They were so icy. I was holding onto the rope, and we climbed up there, and we topped out, and, Rock and everybody's up there, and, just all the tradition that's up there. I remember standing up there, and as Howie ate his pierogies and stuff. I was just looking out. There was a faint hint of light in the sky. It was like 4:45 in the morning. It was just gorgeous. And I was like, man, this is what Hardrock is about. So I think whenever I think about the race, like I always think about climbing up Virginia's, because it will be the middle of the night for me for sure too. Unless I'm like doing really bad, it might be the next day, but I'm anticipating it being dark, and just climbing up there and getting to be part of that tradition. And I would say that actually will probably be one of the most challenging parts too, because the lower pitches might be a little soft depending what time I get there, and you have to be really careful not to punch through, hurt yourself and whatnot. And then definitely at night, if it's icy, I think that'll just be a slow, steady, difficult climb. For me, I know a lot of people say that the crux is Oscars going this direction, but for me in my head, it's Virginia's. So
there's always, I feel like for most of these types of courses, there's always that one mental place where you're like, I got to get there, got to get past it. And then, off to the races at that point.
Yep.
Again, as someone who has experienced this race for multiple years and seen multiple finishes of people and paced and seen the entire course and been a part of the family. We've had Dale on the show last year. Fantastic guest, awesome race director. You could tell that he cares about every single human that is in town.
He's wonderful.
such a great dude. What is one of your favorite memories or favorite moments that either occurs at this race every year or maybe from the last couple of years that you can remember?
I mean, one of the most spectacular moments that I've seen personally was one of the years finishing with Howie. And it was in this direction. So I think it was maybe 2 years ago. The weather had just been epic. Like every single pass, we just got pummeled with hail and lightning, and we were like yelling at each other, like, we gotta get out of here. Like at one point, I honestly thought I might die. Like it was very insane. And, he just powered through it, and we ended up finishing pretty well because the weather motivated us to get moving over these passes. And as we came into town, there was a huge double rainbow over Kendall Mountain, which is like behind town, and you're kind of up high, you're running down into town. And I was just like, what? Like after everything that he'd gone through and we'd been through out there, just to see such a beautiful thing. Like it was, that really sticks out to me. But I think one of the coolest things for me is like whoever I've paced, which has mainly just been Howie and Dom, watching their face at the final pass, like knowing that's the last obstacle. It's a smile that like I don't understand. I want to know what that's like. And I also just like watching them do it. It was just like so cool.
Yeah.
And I really, and there's been other times, like too, if we're up at the pass and there's other hard rockers up there too, there's just this sense of relief when you're on that last pass, that last obstacle. That's just, I look forward to seeing that because it's really, really powerful.
I hope that there's 1,000 video cameras and photos of your finish, Katie. It's gonna be pretty damn epic. I'm sure of that. But a part of me is also like, I hope there's not 1,000 cameras. I hope it's one.
There will be Dom. He always has his phone.
Dom's all I care about. So. Dom's camera. Dom knows how to point
it.
Is
all you care about.
It is. Dom. I talk about Dom probably more than a man who lives 1,500 miles away from him should. All the time. Let's get to a couple more live questions.
A question from Chris in the chat room. Katie, do you plan on teaming up with anyone during the race? Are you planning on going, or are you going to be a solo act? Any other runners that you plan on running with?
No, I'm just going to do my thing. I have pacers, so I'm not like running the whole thing solo, but yeah, I will 100% run my own race.
Who's on your team?
Yeah, who's your squad?
As far as your crew?
My squad. Dom, of course. And then my friend Peter, who used to live in LA with us, that now lives in Denver. My friend Sana, who lives in LA. And one of my childhood best friends is actually coming out. Sarah, who was in our wedding, if you remember, she was a tall blonde.
Yeah.
She's coming out, and then my parents are actually driving out from Missouri. So I've got a good little team going on, and I'm really pumped my parents are going to come see it. So
your mom is adorable, awesome, and easily one of the most badass, supportive parents out there. She is hilarious. If any of you guys get the opportunity to meet Katie's mom, do it. High five her, get her number, do whatever you need to do, because she's hilarious and she'll make you laugh forever. I talk about your mom probably more than a man that lives more than 15 miles away. Let's get to one more question here.
Yeah, there's a question from Tim saying, it looks like you're also on the roster for AC 100. Are you still planning on running that?
Oh, yeah. That might be a dumb idea, but Guillaume, who said hi to me earlier, has already committed to pacing me, and I'm going for it. Like, if I'm going to, like, tear my body up, possibly with children and whatnot, I'm just like, last hurrah. I'm going to bang these suckers out, and then I'm good.
I mean, that's a pretty damn difficult double. I didn't realize that you would potentially also be running AC, but yeah. I mean, I get once you finish Hardrock, AC's essentially like a walk in the park.
No. I don't think about it that way.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm interested to see, because I think you use such different muscles out here at Hardrock. There's a lot more hiking and whatnot. I think it could be fine. I also think I probably go out too fast at AC every year because I have a lot of adrenaline and I care so much about my goals that maybe it might be better. I don't really know, but it's been the plan all along, because I was always registered for AC and I didn't know that I was going to get into Hardrock, and there's no wait list for AC, so there's not really anything I can do about it. I think if there was, I would probably give my spot to somebody that was that was their A race, because I think AC should always be an A race. It deserves that. But in my personal situation, I'm just going to go ahead and do them. And I've known since the beginning of the year. So I've trained and, sought out the advice of what to do in between. And I've got a plan for my recovery. I'm already thinking forward to. So.
That's pretty awesome. That's awesome. I'm actually really excited for you. As far as, again, we have a lot of people who view this show, whether live or the archive version, who maybe are contemplating running an ultra. You've been there. You've been in the phase where you haven't run an ultra, but you're looking to maybe run your first, or, you've gone through the whole gamut now of running all the distances. Well, not all of them, because they're still, 200s or the new 100. Do you have advice for those who may be looking to do their first ultra, or maybe they're looking to do their first 50 mile or first 100? Do you have any advice for people who are looking to jump up?
You mean like any ultra, just general? Sure.
Yeah, general.
Oh man, that's the most open-ended question I think I've ever been asked in my life.
You're welcome. Here, let me make it more specific. Do you have any advice for anyone looking to run a hard 100 miler?
Sure. I think if you're going to take that sort of challenge on, do your homework, understand what the course is, and give yourself the best opportunity that you can to finish. Because I think sometimes, there's people out here at Hardrock that are from Missouri or from Florida, and they're like, how do you train? And it's like, they figure it out, how to do it, because they know what they're getting themselves into. And I think that's kind of the thing, whether it's Hardrock or whether it's another difficult 100, is if it's a goal, you've got to take actionable steps. Otherwise it's just a dream. And if you're not doing anything to actually better your chances of finishing something like that, it's kind of a little bit of a pipe dream. Not to say that you won't. It's just you're going to have a lot better experience if you actually, it's not like, oh, I live down here at sea level and I hope I can just do it. I mean, maybe you can, but if you take it seriously, there's a lot of ways that you can no matter where you live, there's things that you can do to take that on, whether it's getting an altitude 10 if it's at altitude, or finding a hill and doing repeats on it, like whatever you need to do. One of my favorite stories, and I don't know who the heck this is, but I just always think about this because I'm from a little suburb of St. Louis called St. Charles. And there was a guy in St. Louis one year that made the U.S. mountain running team. And the way he did that was he went up skyscrapers downtown and he ran steps. And that's how he did it. And I'm like, look, like, know what you're up against and figure out a way to train for it. And there's no excuse then otherwise.
We've had her on the show before, but Casey Lichtai is another good example. Lives in Nebraska, flatland, and can show up at Western States. This year she had a bit of a rough go, but it's still a fantastic story. But in years past, she's been able to show up dealing with altitude and major elevation gain and descent, and she's still able to win the race, it's possible as long as you train for and respect what you are training for. That's great advice.
Exactly.
That's great advice. Great advice. We're going to move into the post show here in just a couple of moments. I again have to thank our guest, Katie Grossman, for being on the show. If you are unfamiliar with her or maybe her social media, Katie, where can people find you online?
I am Instagram is the thing I use the most, and I'm Hey KD Grossman, like KD Grossman. I'm on Twitter at the same, and then I'm on Facebook too, and all my stuff's like public and open. So
go show her some love. Thank her for being on the show, Katie. It's always awesome to have you on. We've been just gushing over the life you've been living lately, and I hope you're enjoying it. It just seems like you're doing exactly what I don't know, what we've been talking about doing, which is
what a lot of people talk about doing, but a lot of people don't get there. And
that's pursuing something that means something to you, and walking away from stability and like a set schedule, and being able to live life a little bit more adventurously. And it's been awesome to follow. So those of you who are maybe unfamiliar with Katie Grossman, go be familiar with what she's doing, because it is something that is inspiring. And I think we can all strive to be a little bit more Katie Grossman in our lives. And also she comes from an awesome dance background, and I think we can all dance a little bit more like Katie Grossman. What is the we've done the quickie question quiz with you in the past, because we've had you on, we've had Dom on, and all that good stuff. But I'm curious, what is going to be your pre-race meal? Like, what is going to be your dinner before Hardrock, and then what is going to be the first thing that you look forward to eating post race?
All right. So my meal before is always just pretty basic, like food groups. So I will go to the Pits Again barbecue, which I actually ate tonight, just to like check it out again. And I will eat a little bit of pulled pork, a potato, and a salad. Just very like meat, potato, salad. And that usually does really, really well for me. Afterwards, the thing I'm looking forward to the most, I've already tasked my dad with this. I have a growler from the Ure Brewing Company, and I love their Box Canyon Brown. So I have tasked him, they will be in Ure around dinner time, and I've tasked him with filling my growler with Box Canyon Brown so that I can enjoy that after. But I will drink some water and eat whatever. I usually eat a grilled cheese when I'm done running. That's like the only thing that sounds good. And then that beer I will look forward to.
Tough as nails, Katie Grossman on the show tonight. Follow her this weekend. You can do that by going to the Hardrock website. They actually have live tracking this year. Hopefully it works. Last year, I think it worked on and off. It's spotty signal at best out there in some spots, but hopefully we'll be able to get some good live updates. Also, I Run Far does a great Twitter job. There will be lots of people out there tweeting and sharing pictures and videos throughout the race. But Katie, we are rooting for you. You are going to be our we're going to be following you pretty much the entire time. Say hello to your crew and your pacers. We haven't seen them in a long time, and hopefully Dom gets in another train ride, because we know Dom loves trains.
Oh gosh.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say a quick kind of off-topic thing. I just want to give a big shout out to everybody from my hometown. Everything is on fire up there. Everything is on fire. There's like thousands of people being evacuated. My parents are fine. I did a tweet or a Facebook thing a couple days ago. So if you guys can, anybody in BC, donate to the Red Cross and help people, because there's so many people that are displaced and losing homes.
It's been hard to watch on the news. Kim's been following the Canadian news over the last couple of days. A small town, Ashcroft, BC, and all the small towns in that region are being rocked by this devastating fire that just ripped through and has continued to and is continuing to rip through the entire region. In fact, the entire province is on emergency alert. Which is unheard of. The province is enormous. So yeah, lots of thoughts and good vibes to everyone who's
so any Canadians up there, just check out your local Red Cross and see what you can do to help, because there's a lot of people in desperate need right now up there. Yep. And this one hit a little bit closer to home. Literally. Very close to home actually. Feet. But everything, your parents are okay for now, but we're getting updates, and we'll continue to update on Twitter. And Kim's been doing a great job of that. But if you can, go a shout out to the Red Cross, Canadian Red Cross. A big thank you to Katie Grossman for joining us on tonight's episode. We are going to do a post show with Katie, so Katie's going to stick around. And if you are unfamiliar with how that works, basically every week we take our guest and we put them into a private chat room that has about 15 minutes of air. Hopefully they survive. Basically, those of you who have supported the show and get to support the show on Patreon for as little as $1 a month, you get to join us for the post shows with all of our guests. We get to ask those questions that don't get asked during the main show, and we get to rapid fire through them with our guests tonight. So we will be doing that. Patreon post show is already up and ready for those of you who are Patreon supporters. If you are not, consider it. Patreon.com/thegingerrunner. For as little as $1 a month, you get to join us every single Monday with our guests. And we're going to wrap the show again with a big shout out to Brian, our now monthly Ginger Runner Live supporter. Ginger Runner Live will continue to happen because of Brian this month. And next month, we'll see who it is. But for this week, we're going to shout out Brian. And next week, I think I'm going to talk to Brian a little bit about his business and what he does and where he's from and that sort of thing. And we'll tell you a little bit more about Brian next week. It's awesome to have viewers who have continued to support the show, even just by sitting and watching it week after week, actually now contribute and help out. Brian's been an awesome supporter on Patreon on and off for the last long time. So thank you, Brian. Great to have you on board. But that's it. That's it.
Am I missing anything?
I don't think so.
Great.
Got a ton of people already in the Patreon.
Yeah, people have already jumped over. So we'll see the Patreon people in just a second. Katie, thank you again. And for those of you who are in Silverton or going to participate in Hardrock or any of that kind of stuff, kick ass, have fun, make as many memories as you can, because I need to live through these memories since I'll probably never run Hardrock, but it's one of those things I'm just so excited to hear about. And Katie, we're going to have to get you back on the show to talk a little bit about your race experience post kissing the rock. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you guys next week. Bye. Ginger Runner.